elite university, one of the prominent universities, and more than 100 years old. So what a great place it was to get our foothold, our foot door into Rice University, and we are so glad. So with that, I welcome and give a very big welcome and warm welcome to Dr. Shivani Bothra. And she is a faculty member right now for the last 5 weeks at Rice University in Houston. It's another joy to tell you Dr. Bothra is a Jain, born and raised in Jaipur and Kolkata in India. Several years ago, Shivani decided to dedicate her whole life to learn, practice, and teach Jainism. She could have become an engineer, a medical doctor, or anything else. But she said, no, I'm going to devote all my life to Jainism. After studying Jain Dharma for several years in India, including at JVB Ladno, she came to Miami, Florida, at Florida International University, where she did her MA in Jainism. And it is so glad to know that there she was awarded the gold medal by the university and also Bhagwan Mahavir Fellowship. Soon after, she wanted to pursue her studies further. She joined Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand, and where she did her PhD in Jainism. Probably it took her 4 or 5 years more over there. Very soon after, as soon as she finished from there, just see how jump in her career, she joined University of California in Santa Barbara as a lecturer in Jainism and Hindi. And those who do not know University of California, Santa Barbara is a very prestigious place. It has the largest department of religious studies probably in the whole of America. And so it was good for Dr. Bothra to get there. There she was teaching Jainism till 5 weeks ago, okay, June 30th. And her classes, there were full with nearly 80 students in her class. And University of California, Santa Barbara, in fact, even yesterday, I was talking to the chairman of the department, Professor Ambeli, and he told me Dr. Bothra is an excellent teacher and a serious scholar. So on July 1st, Dr. Bothra joined Rice University as Bhagwan Mahavir Fellow in Jain Studies. So again, it's an honor for us to have our own at such a prestigious university. I've known Shivani for many, many years, and I've watched her to grow. And few years ago, Jayesh, she visited Houston as part of a research project as well. And when we were living in Sugar Land, she stayed a couple of days with us. How lucky we are to have a Jain scholar teaching Jainism at university like Rice University. I urge all my friends to ask your children who go to Rice University to enroll in her class, and also request JSH board to invite Dr. Bothra to give talks often on Jainism. And also, by the way, you talked about Pathshala, Jayesh, her research work was on a whole Pathshala system. So you will be so glad, and engage her, invite her, teach, ask her to teach upper level classes at Pathshala. And you will be glad, and the students will be glad to learn and hear from her. Dr. Bothra, I'm sure, this is a message for Dr. Bothra. There are several Jain students at Rice University to meet, including even my own granddaughter, who she is there now, to meet and enroll in your class. And one of them is Pranav Mehta, a second-year student at Rice University, who I'm sure is probably right now in this program joining this. So today, Dr. Bothra is joining from Jaipur. And as soon as the flights open up next month, probably, she will be here. So with that, again, a big, very warm welcome to Shivani. And we wish you the all good luck, and we are proud of you, beta. Jai Jinendra. Shivani.
Jai Jinendra, and my warm regards to each one of you who are present here in the Zoom meeting. First of all, thank you for including me in your community. I received this welcome with deep gratitude and great humility. But first of all, I would like to acknowledge the fact that none of this was possible without the bounteous contribution made by North American Jains. Their contribution led to the growth of Jain studies in Western academia, and this is really commendable. Sulekh ji, whom I very fondly and out of respect call Sulekh Uncle, has introduced me with a generous assessment of my involvement in Jain studies. To his assessment, I would really like to add that I am a lifelong seeker of knowledge, and this fellowship is not merely to teach but to learn. The Jain Society of Houston, along with the presence of Samni Jays and Rice University, this research will thrive and Jain studies will flourish. I take this opportunity to thank Chow Center for Research in Asian Studies, who found value in my scholarship and granted me with this very prestigious postdoctoral fellowship. Finally, I would like to express my gratitude to my parents, family, friends, and all those well-wishers without whose blessings and good wishes I wouldn't have been here where I stand today. Thank you all once again. Today's presentation, is the audio clear? I'm just interrupting in between. Okay. Today's presentation I have organized in 3 very short sections. First of all, I would like to just very briefly talk about growth of Jain studies in Western academia, then share my research plans and agendas, also the courses that I would be conducting while at Rice University, and finally share with you some of the snippets of my experience at University of California, Santa Barbara. So as I begin with the presentation, I will share the screen with you. I need host to disable the screen sharing. It says that host disabled your screen sharing.
Yeah, Dr.
It's enabled.
Yeah,
it's enabled.
Jain studies, very initially, Jain studies was first explored by Western scholars, especially the European scholars, long ago. Most of their scholarship was based on textual analysis and linguistic analysis that was mainly dependent on variety of Prakrit languages. This scholarship led to a number of theories that continued for a long time. I will very briefly talk about some of the theories that were set rolling. Firstly, due to the efforts of German Hermann Jacobi, he said that Jainism is an independent tradition. It is neither an offshoot of Hinduism nor an offshoot or a sister concern of Buddhism. This was very important. This fact was very important to establish. There was a society, Pali Text Society, which was established in 1882. And in fact, you will be surprised to know that one of the first publications from that society was Acharang Sutra. But since then, there has been not really much work on Jainism. But other key factors that came out through their exploration was that Hinduism and Buddhism had a very long tradition of scholarship and a very colorful one. By contrast, the Jain tradition was very brief and uninspiring. So that was a concern for Jains in India and outside. Jainism, other things that rolled out were Jain tradition survived where Buddhism did not in India because the former's attention to the needs of laity was not taken into consideration. This is an important theory that was developed. Then in one of the field works, because the initial studies were mostly on textual and linguistic based, later on, much later on, there started to be field work where scholars started to come to India and then observe Jain religion, the practices and community people. So one of the works that was really shocking was by Mrs. Stevenson, who said that the Jain tradition has empty heart, and there were many other theories that Jainism is a tradition of negation. It is a tradition of severe austerities. But most shocking was Mrs. Stevenson's work of 1913, which said that the Jain tradition has empty heart. Later on, Renault's work had claimed that Jainism is Buddhism's darker reflection. So these initial work was such that Jain study kind of lagged behind in comparison to Hindu studies on Hinduism and Buddhism. In fact, one of the very eminent scholar, Professor P.S. Jaini, he said that, and he laments the fact and said that despite the antiquity of the Jain tradition, despite the rich culture, rich literature and heritage of the Jain tradition, despite the fact that the Jain tradition is the only surviving non-Vedic tradition in India, the focused attention on Jain studies has been really ignored and lagged behind. So I would like to repeat what Sulekh uncle just said, that initially Jain studies began by exploration of European scholars, but in due course of time, American scholars jumped into this and the whole study got momentum. But with the establishment of chairs, professorship positions, lectureship positions, postdoctoral fellowship positions, sponsored PhD programs, and MA in Jain studies, I am sure, and we are seeing it every day, every time, that Jain studies in Western academia is now accelerating. And this is a great achievement. And I repeat once more that the Jain community in North America really needs to be commended for such an effort. With this, I move on to the second part of my presentation. The second section, what I will do at RISE, what are my research work at RISE going to be. Now, we know that Jains are a huge migrating community. They have migrated from regional to international migration. And with each migration, there has been a concern among the Jains how to preserve their traditional practices. For that, keeping that in mind, I did my PhD, my doctorate work was Pathshalas, how children are how tradition is transmitted, how religious values are transmitted through Jain Pathshalas. My postdoc builds upon that, and for this postdoc, my goal is to see how religious education among adults is conducted. From children's religious education, I now move on to adult religious education, and that is Swadhyay or self-study. In fact, you will be surprised to see this picture. This is from Houston Jain Society and taken in 2015 when I was conducting my field work on Jain Pathshala. In fact, grandmothers are so eagerly waiting to see what children were learning each Pathshala class. And if you look at the picture more closely, you will feel that how seeds of future are embedded in the past. When I took this picture, I didn't know that my next project would be adult religious education. Swadhyay. So what is Swadhyay? Swadhyay in the Jain tradition is a principle of self-study, which is one of the 6 austerities that has migrated with Jains along with as their epistemological commitment. It is one of the 6 internal tapas or austerities, which is Swadhyay. Now, Swadhyay is conducted in various ways, but due to the migration, how things change, which we saw transformation in religious education of children In the same way, there are diverse ways in which Swadhyay is conducted among adults also. So I am specially interested in understanding how Swadhyay is presented in an American context. What are the sources of educational materials? Because these adult Jains are teachers for Gyanshala children, for Pathshala children. What are the roles of visiting Indian Jain scholars in the religious education of adults? How do Jains deal with sectarian biases and the influences in forming Swadhyay groups? And the socio-emotional implications of Swadhyay groups in coping with the challenges of migration. The main challenge is how do you cope up with the changing environment, changing context, and changing times. So migration has, people really need to cope up with all the changes that come along with migration of communities. So through this project of Swadhyay, I anticipate generating 2 articles for peer-reviewed journals or as independent chapters. Now, Swadhyay is the main theme of my investigation because it relates to migration of Jain communities. Like my PhD work, where I compared migration in Jain communities of India from America, even for my postdoc work, it will be a comparative study where I will compare how Swadhyay has changed different forms in India with how Swadhyay is taking place in North America. So there are 2 interrelated projects that come along with the whole Swadhyay project. One of them is the examination of a devotional long poem called Terapanth Prabodh. It is composed by the late Acharya Tulsi, who seeing that the Terapanth community, Shwetambar Terapanth community in India is a highly migrant community where their adherents have migrated from rural regions of Rajasthan to throughout India and outside. Along with this migration, it was seen that there is diminishing of Terapanth practices and values as well as devotion. So, and because people now migrated to bigger cities, there is always scarcity of time. How to continue the component of Swadhyay because it is a traditional Jain practice. Acharya Tulsi then thought of composing this poem in 125 verses in 1990. And the poem was intended to talk about biography of the Terapanth Acharyas, Jain elements, Jain principles and values, and also to evoke devotion or bhakti among its followers. So in this project, my interest in publishable material lies in seeing Terapanth Prabodh is just an example that is being taken for investigation, but it relates to the overall component of Swadhyay, that how in today's time there is a transition from textual languages to local dialect, as this Terapanth Prabodh poetic song is composed in Rajasthani language. So we examine this transition. Then the type of knowledge that is generated through Swadhyay is also an important aspect of this research. The roles of monks and nuns in conducting Swadhyay and the kind of knowledge that is generated out of this. Terapanth Prabodh is the second minor project that I will do during my time at RISE. The second minor project, which relates to the overall theme of Swadhyay, is a television program called Shanka Samadhan, or Clarifying Doubts. It is a creative project that was of Swadhyay that was started by Muni Praman Sagar in 2014. There are, out of 5 types of Swadhyay, the 2 key is Prechna, which means questioning, and Pravanchana, which means answering. This program is all about question and answers. It is a very interesting way of understanding Jain elements, Jain principles and Jain values, and clarifying one's doubts. So Jain laity across age and gender come prepared with their questions, and they ask questions to Muni Praman Sagarji regarding traditional questions regarding Tirthankar's lives or regarding scriptures, or even modern questions like what is veganism, what is euthanasia. So that shows that youngsters as well as adults are all able to engage with this program. So seeing the popularity of the program, I got interested to delve deep into this, how this phenomena works. What kind of doubt the program is intended to clarify? How does the program respond to the increasing migration of Jains? Because as I said, there is a huge migration in Jain communities, and the migration is not just international or migration, it is regional, local, and international. And each migration has its impact on religious practices, traditional practices, and adaptation from your surrounding context. The influence of migration on religious practices. So these are some of the questions that I will explore and examine while I'm conducting research on Swadhyay in Jain communities in India and North America. So this is the research project. In addition to this research project for this scholarship, I intend to revisit my PhD dissertation on children's Pathshala and convert it into a book. Now comes a very key thing, that what will I teach at RISE? At Chow Research Center, two courses I have planned for the spring 2020. One is Introduction to the Jain Worldview. This course is purely about the Jain tradition. And the pattern is such that there will be lectures to contextualize the Jain tradition against other traditions in India. Then the main pedagogy that I intend to use, which I also used while I was conducting this course at University of California, Santa Barbara, is stories. I received very good feedback and comments from students as well as other faculty members with whom I discussed this pedagogy, that to know, to understand, or to examine a religious tradition through stories is a wonderful idea. I will continue this pedagogy in the same course at RISE. So and most of the stories are from textual sources, so that all the more each and every class aspect talks about the Jain tradition. There will be, I will talk about the Jain religion, key principles, key doctrines, as well as the fourfold Jain community, which is very important. Then second key feature of this course is field visits. One of the feedback that I had received from Santa Barbara was that students who were in fourth year, final year, they said that they never had such a first-hand experience with the religious community. And in fact, this field visit was such a wonderful experience that we were planning to do another field visit with all the faculty members from University of California, Santa Barbara to the Jain Center of Southern California. But due to the pandemic and due to remote teaching, some things didn't materialize. But my idea for Rice University is that since Santa Barbara and the Southern California Center had quite about 100 miles of difference, but here the difference is not so much. My idea is to engage community people with the students. It shouldn't be just one-time visit at surface level. I want more and more interaction, more and more people from the community practitioners should come to the classroom, as well as students coming to the center, so that the interaction is more lasting, and then there can be further research in the Jain tradition. Students, it should generate interest to start to continue more serious research within the Jainism, or comparing Jainism with other world religions. Then taking advantage of Samniji at the Jain in Houston, I also plan to have some sessions of yoga and meditation with them, interaction with of students with monastic community will also be a very worthwhile for students. So I'm very excited about starting this course at Rice. The second course that I plan to conduct is Understanding Gandhi's Nonviolence and Exploration. This understanding of Gandhi's nonviolence would be through Hinduism, Jainism, and Christianity. The idea is that I want to bring Gandhi, nonviolence, and all those religions that had influence on Gandhi, all those people that had influence on Gandhi. So because there is a appeal and there is always an interest to know about Gandhi, and even more to know about Gandhi, the interest is how Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence developed. What are the influences that shaped Gandhi's ahimsa? Some of these questions are of really interest to scholars, and we will explore these questions in our course. So understanding and to understand non-violence through these three traditions is one of the agendas. Then examine Gandhi's life and influences through these traditions, including those people across these religious traditions who have had a strong impact on Gandhi's thinking. Then another key feature of this course would be to differentiate between non-violence and non-violence. Then examine Gandhi's food philosophy across these three traditions. These are some things, is a basic structure for conducting this course. Now, when we talk about non-violence, whether it is Gandhian non-violence or it is Jain tradition, non-violence definitely stands out as a key aspect of the Jain tradition. And it is also important to know that when we talk about practice of non-violence, we immediately, food comes into our thought, into our thinking. Though I don't consider that Jainism is a kitchen religion, but we cannot even ignore the fact that we can't isolate the Jain food practices, and we can't avoid the relationship that it has with the concept of non-violence. So in both the courses, food and Jain way of eating will also be an added attraction for students who are not exposed to vegetarian vegan diet. And that can be really a USP for both the courses. So this was some of the things that I have been thinking about that I would do during my time at Rice University. Either we can stop here and have question answers, or I can continue with the third section of my experiences with teaching at University of California, Santa Barbara. Should I continue with the third section and then complete it? Okay, let me continue. It was my first real experience of conducting full courses at University of California, Santa Barbara. As Sulekh uncle had said very elaborately about the kind of courses I took. See, University of California, Santa Barbara, like all the UC universities, have quarter system. This is unlike Rice University, which has a semester system. And a semester is about 4 weeks to 5 weeks more than a quarter. In a quarter system, we teach for 10 weeks, and then there is a final exam week and final grading week. So the courses are kind of short and crisp. For the first quarter, I only taught Hindi as I was settling down, knowing the place, knowing people, knowing students, and understanding the department. Hindi was one thing which I taught across all the 3 quarters. And students who were in my Hindi class were not just heritage students. Now you will wonder what is heritage students, because this is what even I understood when I first joined UCSB. That students with Indian origin are heritage students who generally show more inclination toward taking Hindi language, because I found the reasons why they take Hindi very intriguing. One of the students said that she wants to take up Hindi because her parents start to talk to her in English and tell her something, give her a lecture or ask her to do something. But gradually they switch to Hindi. The parents start talking amongst each other in Hindi, and she just doesn't understand what her father and mother is talking about. this about her. So in order to understand the parents' conversation about the child, Hindi is important. And then of course, there are other reasons, like people who are interested in Bollywood films would like to take up Hindi. People who are interested in talking to their grandparents in Hindi when they visit India, and so on. There are many other reasons. Besides, and the students are not just Hindi, but there were students who were non-Indian origin also. And there were a few students who did independent study in Jainism as well as Hindi. Those who got really interested in furthering these subjects. Now, besides Hindi, the other courses that I took was Jainism, Introduction to the Jain Tradition. And after the field visit and after the course got completed, some of the students had very good comments to make. Like they said that one student said, I really think the Jainism course changed my philosophy of life. I don't kill any scary things such as spiders as I used to do before, which is really a great, I would say one short course of 10 weeks is a good enough time for a student to have such a transformation of heart. Then another student said that I found this experience to be insightful, as I gained a deeper appreciation for the Jain tradition in its ability to unite members of diaspora. This was after we had our first and the only visit to the Jain Center of Southern California. But the visit had a very strong impact in the minds of students. And they said that if there was more opportunities, they would like to go again, which I hope that I will be able to do what I wanted to do during conducting this course at Rice. Then University of California, one good thing about UCSB is that they really encourage postgraduate students to take up independent research and encourage them to attend American Academy of Religion, the AR conferences. They of course host a huge reception where they invite their alumni, past scholars, new students, old students, and it's a big event. I personally gained a lot. I have been to AAR conferences several times before, but being a lecturer at UCSB and attending the conferences where this time I presented 3 papers, the whole experience of the way faculty interacts with students, the kind of prestige and respect one gets just because one is from UCSB's Religious Studies department is beyond imagination. And faculty though they are all very big names, but they are really generous with time and they really encourage quality teaching and quality learning. So they have a very good technological system that also supported me while I was doing remote teaching during the 3rd quarter of my UCSB teaching. Now, while I was teaching the Jain tradition, the course on Jainism, there are 3 things that strikes out, which I would like to just share. That some of the key principles that generated maximum questions were, can anyone guess what those principles could be? This is just a question for you to think about, but what really came out that people had maximum number of discussion and question answers for Anikantvad, while we were trying to understand what is Anikantvad, which I always tell them just 1 or 2 classes on Anikantvad is not enough to really understand the whole concept. Then on Sanlekhna, which has always been a very controversial topic. 3rd, which students were quite surprised to see the austerities and the kind of lifestyle Jain monks and nuns do even today in the 21st century. The way they walk barefoot, the way they eat 1 time a day or twice a day, the way they take food, the way they practice tapas and other monastic practices. Many students had lot of objection to those practices in the 21st century, but then gradually when they understand the concept and the motive behind all this, things do change, but not necessary that they all agree to what we say, but of course they understand a different perspective. The idea of putting forward Jainism is to say that this is yet another tradition with a different perspective, and we respect and tolerate other perspectives. Then, but definitely it was really a tremendous learning opportunity, which I had not imagined was during my stay at UCSB teaching. It was very short because the third quarter I had to do remote teaching from India. Had this not appeared, then maybe my learning would have been much more if I would have continued to stay in Santa Barbara. So this is mainly what I would like to share with you, and I thank you so much for your attention. Please feel free to ask as many questions that you want to.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shivani Bothra. We have a couple of questions already on the chat box. Can you please go through those? So first question is from Prerak Shah.
Yeah.
So everyone can see the question. It is mainly what he's asking is Jains are told ahimsa is parmodharam, but what about millions of Shukshma Jeev that we kill in the process of drinking ukladu pani, like the garam pani which we normally drink during the during Ekashna, Upwas, or any of the
Jains think ahimsa is parmo dharma, but what about millions of sukshma jeev that we kill in the process of drinking boiled water? Drinking boiled water is also part of Jain practice, which is, see, being a Jain doesn't mean that one can be free from being committing violence. There is something called necessary violence, and some of the practices fall under necessary violence. If you don't boil water, and if one doesn't boil water and drink, then the amount of hinsa that is possible can be multiple times more.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up question, but I will ask that if I'm permitted to ask. But I have a follow-up question on that.
Please go ahead, Prerak Bhai. I think this would be better if you ask follow-up right now.
So the next question that I see is, who was ahead in time scale, Buddha or Mahavira? According to both Western scholars and Indian scholars, Mahavira predated Buddha. That fact has been quite well established with evidence.
Thank you, Shivani. Prerak Shah, do you have a follow-up question, please?
Yes. So I recently, so basically I'm from Jains of San Antonio Sangh. I'm part of their committee. And we recently started within my Sangh talking about 12 vrats of Jains, and also Jeev, Ajeev. We went through that topic last year. So one of the questions that came up, just as Dr. Shivani just mentioned, is that Jainism allows for some sort of violence, you know.
You can avoid complete violence. I mean, there is violence in cooking. There is violence in when we walk. We unintentionally do hurt living beings. But then everything is not avoidable. You have to do certain things, and then you have to and the violence is there.
Right. So yeah, and I've learned that as well while we were researching on those Jeev topics and all that. But I would just like to know, like, is there a text or a scripture that maybe we can refer to where this kind of allowance is written down, maybe like in Agams or somewhere, like Jain Agam or somewhere?
If you really want to understand non-violence, or then there are two texts which talks about in detail. One is Acharang Sutra and another is Tattvart Sutra. And
Okay.
there are English translations of both available. Tattvart Sutra, there is this very well-written English translation is by Nathmal Tatia, Professor Nathmal Tatia, That Which Is.
Okay, I'm probably gonna write that down. Okay.
And Acharang Sutra has been, that is one of the first book that late Professor Herman Jacobi had translated. That gives in detail about Sukshma Hinsa.
And in there, they talk about this kind of what is permissible violence and what goes beyond permissible violence, right?
There are various commentaries written on these that gives in more detailed elaboration about permissible or non-permissible things.
Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Okay, Shivani, I'm going to take over JS.
Anudeep.
Yes.
One second.
Yes.
I just want to make a couple of comments that Shivani, because you are such a great teacher at University of California, Santa Barbara, that you created a very great environment. And because of that, 2 months ago, we collected $1 million and we created a permanent Bhagwan Vimarnath, endowed chair in Jainism at University of California, where you were at Santa Barbara, where you were there. So it's all because of you. You paved the foundation for us. And now at Rice University, again, you are coming, and with your being there probably for the next 2 or 3 years, you will pave the way for us, for the Jain community to think that bring Jainism permanently at Rice University. We never thought, I've been there in Houston so many years, never thought that Jainism will become an item of studies and teaching and research at a university like Rice. So because of now you and previously because of Brian Donaldson, we are making very good progress at that place. So thank you.
Hello, Jai Janendra. My name is Anudeep Jain, and I'm also part of JSH Houston on the executive committee. And I want to thank Shivani for taking the time to talk to us, and we welcome her to Houston and look forward to having her come to JSH. I just want to mention a few little items about the Rice University Jain program that is jointly sponsored by the Jain community and Rice University for fundraising purposes. For the cost of that program actually is about $80,000 per year, which is split half and half between the Jain community of North America, mostly Houston, and Rice University. And every year, so we have to raise $40,000 from our Jain community. So we encourage you all, if you like what you see, and especially now in Houston, we're going to have the benefit of having Shivani for the next several years to engage us, teach us, educate us about Jainism. It's such a luxury to have her with us. I encourage you all to donate, if at all possible, to the program. There's several easy ways to donate. You can donate directly to Jain Society of Houston. You can donate on Zelle, online, and just in the comments, though, in the memo section, put put Rice University Jain program, so they know how to allocate those funds. Or you can also send a check to Jain Society. In the memo section, just make a comment about it's the Rice University program. Or you can also send myself or Parag Shah. You can reach out to us and send us checks. My phone number, if you have any if you need any information about the program, is 713-256-3916. And you can send me, if you want, send me a check as well if you're interested. I can share the address after, we can, if you want, or also Mr. Parag Shah. His phone number is 832-806-0988. And he's also one of the organizers and can help you out with if you're interested in donating. And with that now, I'd like to turn it over to Parag. He'll just say a few final thoughts before we wrap up. Thank you.
If you don't mind, before you wrap up, just one quick thing. My name is Hemendra Parasmal. I'm not sure if a little bit of an overview was given about our Pathshala over here, the Jainism Pathshala that we run. Was anything done on that?
The Pathshala in the Houston program?
Yes.
I am not.
I think it was there. Jayesh mentioned about the Pathshala program, and Shivani also included. Dr. Shivani Bothra also mentioned about the Pathshala's program was going very great. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact.
But if you want to bring up something more,
weekend,
yeah.
Right, yeah.
No, I just wanted to welcome Shivani. I know it's always a pleasure to have folks from RISE. Even Brianna was such a pleasure to have in our Pathshala do guest lecture. So we look forward to inviting you, Shivani. And my name is Hemendra Parasmal. I coordinate the Pathshala over here. I think a little bit of overview you must have got. We have about 300 kids. So it's a pretty full-fledged Pathshala. So we definitely look forward to hearing from you and coordinating with you. So welcome.
Thank you.
Parag, I'll let you take over now.
Okay. Good morning, Jai Jinendra. What a fantastic way to start. We're about a week away from producer, so this is actually a very good opportunity. And first of all, thank you, JSH, Executive Committee, and all the people who put together for Dr. Bothra, her welcome. Really, we wish she was in person, but obviously we will do that when she arrives in Houston and when things open up. But thank you, Dr. Bothra. I really appreciate actually your your career, your academic career, and the Santa Barbara. We always used to hear great things from that program from Sulek Uncle. So to know a little bit more insight to it, and really we can look forward to the programs that you laid out here, and we have a great opportunity in Houston with Samaniji's here. We have Jain Temple here, and fantastic, the growth in the Pathshala program. So again, I want to thank everybody. As Anudeep mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us for any information you have. We want to continue to have this interaction, whether it is virtual, whether it's in person. Ideally, we prefer in person with Dr. Bothra. We're trying to shoot for at least a quarterly, if we can, bring everybody an update, because this is for the whole community. And again, Dr. Bothra, welcome to the Jain family of Houston. And we look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully before end of the year. Thank you, Jai Jinendra.
Thank you.
So the program ends?
Yes. Yes.